So I'm going to read in a moment a passage where someone seriously struggled with the Lord and wrestled with him even. I wonder if you know what the passage is. Extra coffee for free. But it's quite an astounding passage, really. So I'm going to read it that night. If you can have it on the screen, that'd be great. That night, Jacob, got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He was in serious trouble. His brother that he had deceived was coming after him. He'd heard 400 armed men. So he was in trouble. He didn't know what to do. He was seriously struggling. So he sent everything he had to the other side of this river, huge river that flows down towards Jordan. And after he'd sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone. And sometimes it's not good to be alone. It's not good to be lonely. We're made for company, aren't we, and communion and fellowship. But there's times when it's good to be alone, to sort things out, and especially with God. And that's what was about to happen. And a man wrestled with him till daybreak. So you've got Jacob in Hebrew, at the river Jabbok, and the word for wrestle in Hebrew is Yerbach. So you've got Jacob who yerbacked at Jabbok, sorry. Which I find interesting. In the midst of kind of a serious kind of passage, the writer's kind of playing with words, a little twinkle from God, playing with words, a few puns going on in the original language that doesn't come through, like in the English. Anyway, that excites me anyway, forgive me. And so, when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched, as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me. I will not let you go until you bless me." Ever said that to the Lord? I will not let you go till you bless me. And the man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and you have overcome." And Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It's because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." And the sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. So quite an almighty struggle that lasted through the night. I came across a couple of, I don't know what you think when you think of that, what sparks off in your imagination. I came across a couple of kind of paintings, and if you could put them up, thanks, Esther. This was a depiction by Rembrandt of this scene. I don't know what you think of this. Rembrandt's clearly a very skilled and painter, and I'm not a great art historian, but I don't know, that really kind of hits the mark. It's kind of, gently in the angel's arms. I'm not sure really if that's what was going on, So I'm not sure about this painting. Can I have the next one, please? And this is kind of a classic one, classic sketch. What do you think about this one? It's a sort of the angel almost pushing Jacob off the side. I'm not quite sure that really hits the mark either. And finally, I came across this, which is rather startling. So this is have you seen this before? It's in the Tate, Britain. It's massive. It's 2.5 tons of sculpture. And I think it's Jacob Epstein who's sculpted out of one mass. And you've got the sort of the angel on the right, kind of imposing, 7 foot tall, yet still kneeling, to show he's just great and awesome. And this is at daybreak, when sort of Jacob has he's struggled, he's let it all go, and now he's kind of limp, he's laid it all, he's bare, he's naked, so he's kind of let it all out, he's struggled to the end, and now he's just kind of limp in this mighty angel's arms. It might be a bit unsettling, but you've got the angel representing God looking at him. And they finish at the end of the struggle, he finishes in his arms. And so, startling and maybe unsettling that is, I do quite like that one. Just at the end of the struggle, Lord, what can I do? I'm laid bare before you, but you see me, and I'm in your arms. Thank you. Because this was a serious struggle that Jacob went through at this stream, Jabbok, which literally means to empty oneself. He emptied himself, really, at this ford. He was at this crossroads, this great river between different territories. He knew that his brother was coming after him, and he was struggling. And he was a man that had struggled often through his life. Even that word struggle, Yerbach, it's got the word in there of dust. It's like all the dust of life kind of covered over him. Have you ever struggled? Of course you have. We've all struggled, haven't we? Sometimes like the dust of life is just kind of over us. And we have struggled, and sometimes we do struggle. Jacob was struggling there in the present. But he'd struggled from birth, hadn't he? He'd grasped his brother's leg as he was coming out the womb, apparently. Even from birth, he was, I'm going to struggle. You know, it's kind of, there it was. It's almost like part of who he was. And Jacob even means takes by the heel, the overreacher. He's really the one who struggled even from birth. And what he'd done through this life, he'd also struggled, hadn't he? He'd struggled to get the birthright from his brother Esau. Remember when Esau came back from the field and he was hungry and he'd made this stew and he manipulated the situation so that Esau sold his birthright for a pot of lentils or stew. He got the blessing, the firstborn blessing from his father. He'd struggled to get that too, hadn't he? Before this episode, he'd sent, knowing that his brother was coming to him, was it in revenge? Didn't know. He sent kind of herds of goats just to appease him, and animals, one after the other, just to slowly appease him. He was struggling with what he had done and what he was. But he's also struggling with what had been done to him. Because remember when he went in to get the blessing of the firstborn covered in hair to hide himself, to pretend he was his brother, remember that? It was his mother, Rebecca, who had encouraged him to do that. You know, he had struggled because of the influence and what had been done to him. And he was struggling now in the present. What was going to happen? His brother was coming with 400 men. You know, what's going to happen in this moment? He was struggling. And finally, he struggled with the future too. A few chapters earlier, remember, he met with God. Remember the dream? He woke up and he saw a glimpse of heaven. And God said these amazing things. He said, the land in which you lie will be given to you. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. All peoples will be blessed through you. I'll be with you. I'll watch over you wherever you go. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you, basically, God was saying. And that was the future. That was the promise of God in the future. And what did Jacob say? Well, if you'll be my God, if you'll watch over me, if you'll clothe me and feed me, then you can be my God. And whatever I get, I'll give a tenth. It's such a measly reply to the abundance of God and the generosity and the promise of faithfulness. And all he says, well, if you'll feed me and clothe me, then maybe you'll be my God. And I'll give you something back anyway. And he was struggling that God would really take hold of him in the future and really care for him. Anybody here feel like that? Do we feel like that sometimes? Have we struggled? Have we struggled maybe from birth? Have we struggled through what we've done through life? Have we struggled because what others have done to us? Are we struggling in the present? Are we struggling with, well, what's going to happen in the future? If you are, you're in good company. Here is a man called Jacob who had exactly the same thing. What do we do with our struggles of every kind of description imaginable? Well, we can clearly get bitter, we can get closed up, we can just become unhappy, and we can let the forces of destruction kind of eat us up. But there is another way and another solution, and that's what Jacob found at this river of Jabbok. He came with all his struggles, passed through his life the way he was, struggles for the future. And the key verse really is, the key attitude that he had is, I will not let you go. God, I'm coming to you with all my struggles. I will not let you go unless you bless me. I will not let you go until you bless me. He is coming to the end of himself, this river that means emptying himself, this picture of Epstein, absolutely laid bare and naked before the Lord. Everything that I am. That's what he was wrestling with really in this place. Unless you bless me, I will not let you go. And I believe the Lord invites us to have that kind of attitude, whatever struggle we have. I will not let you go, Lord, unless you bless me. Because the Lord longs to bless. And blessing is not a kind of an anemic kind of word. Sometimes we say it, a sort of blessing at the end of a service, and it's kind of, just a way to close a service or something. The blessing of God gives, it actually speaks life. It speaks newness. It speaks hope. It's in the words itself. It's a meeting and encountering with God. Because Jacob knew that he had been blessed so many times, hadn't he, in the past. He'd been blessed with a dream in the place called Bethel. He'd been, if you read the chapters before, with flocks, and he'd been given a family, and he'd been blessed with a firstborn blessing, which he didn't quite deserve, but he got blessed. So he knew that in his present crisis, if God didn't bless him and meet with him, he was genuinely doomed. But as I said, the blessing of God imparts life. Can you remember Jesus with the loaves and the bread, the 5 loaves and the 2 fish? What did Jesus do? He broke it and he blessed it. Blessed it. It kind of multiplies. It creates life where there wasn't life before. Jesus at the Last Supper, he took bread, he took a cup of wine and he blessed them. There was something more than just breaking with 2 hands. It was the breath of God that spoke of bloodshed, of wine spilt, of bloodshed and forgiveness. Blessing in the Old English word is bledsian, apparently, and it means consecrated with blood, which is very interesting with the parallels of the Christian message. It's Jacob wanting the blessing of God, including forgiveness and grace and mercy for what he had done. And the blessing of God imparts something new. It gave Jacob new life. It gave him a new identity, didn't it? You'll no longer be called Jacob, you'll be called Israel. There's something that God imparts that is new, a new purpose, a new identity even, if it's not too bold to say that. So the words, when God speaks blessing, they are more than simple words. It's a meeting, it's an encountering with God. And Jacob indeed met with God. And he said, I've seen God face to face, yet I've been spared. He was blessed and he had met with God. I love it. I was reading this word blessing. It's connected also with a word in Hebrew, with the word embrace. And I just love that. If you can imagine a wrestle, for me, when I think of a wrestle, okay, you can think of sumo wrestlers, you know. I'm sure you can easily imagine myself as a sumo wrestler. But I won't be taking off my top today. But when I think of kind of wrestling, I think of maybe a son with his father, a good father, who just wants to wrestle with his a son that wants to wrestle with his father. And so he wrestles with his father, all his strength, and maybe he hits him and he pulls him and they tug each other. And the father could easily overpower him, but he doesn't. He just lets the son expend his energy, use his muscles, and maybe get rid of some of the frustration and the struggles of his day. And just wrestling, and maybe just bashing on the chest or whatever. But in the end, they both fall exhausted. And a good father, what would he do? Okay, we've had a struggle, we've had a wrestle. I just want to take you in my arms and embrace you. And that's the meaning of blessing. I take you in my arms and I want to bless you. And that's why I quite like that statue of Jacob Epstein. It finishes when I pour out my soul, when I pour out everything that's happened or what I am going through, all the struggle about the future, then, Lord, here it is, all of me. I'm done. I've emptied myself at this river. Take me in your arms. And the Lord does that. That's the blessing of the Lord. He takes you in his arms. And another incredible meaning of the word, but it's barach, is, if somebody might know it, it means to kneel. The blessing of God even honors us, even in our struggles. When God blesses us, it's almost like okay, I'll take you on my arms. But there's another kind of picture in those words of kneeling. I honor you. You have come to me, my child. I love you. I care for you. And I just want to bless you. I want to speak new life and new hope to you. And finally, when I think of the word blessed, sometimes it gets translated as happy, doesn't it, in some translation? Blessed are the poor in spirit. It's not a great translation. But it does give the sense of, well, when we pour out everything we have, our struggles to the Lord, he blesses us with life, with forgiveness, with newness. But somehow he puts a spark of joy. I would say joy. Bless. If we're blessed, there is joy in our hearts. He wants to do that. He wants to baptize us with his joy and truly be blessed. I've been reading about the Apostle Paul, who said in 2 Corinthians 7, it says, in all our troubles, he talked about conflicts on the outside, 2 Corinthians 7, fears within, body having no rest, harassed at every turn. But what did he say in the midst of all this kind of struggling? My joy knows no bounds. My joy knows no bounds. I think, wow, I want a piece of that. Because knowing that God is with us in it, through it, he gives grace, he gives mercy, and he does something supernatural. Joy is a fruit of the Holy Spirit. It's not man-made. It's not happiness, which is so ephemeral, based on circumstances. It's a deep welling up of joy. So I don't know where you find yourselves, where we find ourselves. I know the world finds ourselves in a moment of struggle, and indeed intense struggle for what's happened, what's happening, and maybe the future. The Lord invites us to come to him with that heart. Lord, I will not let you go until you bless me. I know that you can be found. I know you can easily overpower me. I know you could easily just say forget it and say I'm leaving you or something. But you stay with me. You put your hand on me. You impart life to me. You give me refreshment. You give me mercy. And you take me in your arms and you embrace me. And even to the point of saying, well, I'm going to put my joy in you, despite the circumstances. Would you let yourself be blessed by the Lord this morning? Is there something you need to bring before the Lord, a struggle? Maybe it's gone on for a long time. Maybe it's what you're going through now. Do you want to come to the river Jabbok now and bring it to the Lord? Let's pray together. Lord, you know what we go through, you know everything. So simply in these moments, Lord, where maybe we have struggled, maybe we are struggling, but we come to the river, a river of life, a river to empty ourselves before you, and to not just let it kind of bubble away, but to grab hold of you, the one who lets himself be found. Lord, we will not let you go until you bless us. Thank you that you want to bless us. Thank you want to impart newness and hope. Thank you want to take us in your arms and fill us even with a supernatural joy. So, just in the quiet of these moments, and just want to invite you to bring anything you feel you need to the Lord right now.